Good morning, Year 4, and welcome to your Wednesday's lesson, where we are going to explain author's word choice, just as we did yesterday, but we are going to independently apply it to the next chapter of Rajat. So to be successful, you'll still be able to find the key vocabulary, you will understand how the word choice supports meaning of the text, and you will consider the effect on you and others as a reader. We are going to read chapter 6, as I said, and you will answer the questions that require you to explain. And as I just mentioned, further embedding the skill of understanding, explaining. So you're going to answer the questions in the assignment part of Teams. And if you find you need support, you're going to use the color-coded assignment, which says task with support in Teams. And I'll show you that at the end of this. Okay, although you'd normally read it to yourself, I'm going to read it for you because I understand it might be hard to view it on some of the devices that you may be using. So I've labelled them page 1, and that just helps with the questions in a minute. Rajat could see for miles and miles. There were no walls or trees to block his view anymore, just open space rippling out ahead of him, beneath him, above him. He was standing in space, and it was a long way to fall. He peered down the inside of the wall. He could see nothing through the trees. The gentleman's cat and the elder paw were hidden by the tangled net of branches. There was no way back. He was truly on his own. Had he done the right thing? Shouldn't he have helped his grandfather? He couldn't get that picture out of his mind. The elder paw limp like a broken toy. Tremors were coming up from somewhere deep within him, racking him open. Rajat blocked them, stopped them, pushed them back down. The elder paw knew what he was doing. He'd planned it. He was willing to lay down his life so Rajat could have the chance to go outside and find a dog. All he could do now was go on, but where? Ahead of him was a sea of lights stretching far away into the darkness. Rajat couldn't tell what they were or where they led. He looked up, another sea of lights, the moon and stars cold and distant. They made him giddy in the pit of his stomach, so dizzy that he could almost feel the wall slip out from under him. He closed his eyes and counted to 10. It didn't work. The view was too big. He was too small. A purebred Mesopotamian blue had no place on top of a wall. But then, as his family said, he wasn't much of a blue, so who was he? Beneath that giant sky, he was no one. He was nothing. Rajat's stomach lurched. He was going to be sick if he stayed on the wall any longer. Down. He had to get down, and quickly. The black cats would be looking for him. But how? He couldn't climb down the wall. It was sheer. He'd overbalance and crash if he tried. There was a tree outside the wall, just one. He could climb down a tree if he could only make it that far. He stretched out the paw. His pad zipped on wet moss that cloaked the stone. He clung on with his claws and regained his balance. A blast of bitterly cold wind almost pushed him over the edge. Another wave of giddiness washed over him. The wind seemed to taunt him with its song. Too high, it sang. Too high, too soon. Rajat tried to shut it out, but the song was everywhere. You've gone too high, too soon. You'll never make it to that tree. He ignored it, positioned his tail for extra balance, and took another step along the mossy stone. It was like walking on ice. Treacherous, impossible. In his mind, he saw himself slip, slide, skid off that wall, smashed to pieces on the ground below. He shuddered. Think of something else, he told himself. Think of the way. What was it? Slow time, moving circles, shadow walking. Rajat staggered towards the tree. Too high, whistled the wind. Slow time, he yelled back. He wasn't going to let the wind beat him. Moving circles, he wasn't going to let the wall beat him. Shadow walking, because he was Rajat Paw and he knew the way. Rajat walked the wall like he'd been walking walls all his life. He was light and springy on his paws. It worked! The way actually worked! He wasn't dizzy anymore. He didn't feel sick. I'd like to see Julius do this, he thought. Now he just had to step into the tree and he could climb down easily. He'd done the hard part. Rajat grinned and pounced onto the nearest branch. Crack! Falling. Didn't test it. Stupid! The wind whipped into his face as he fell towards the ground. He closed his eyes and everything went black. Right, so now we've got some questions. So number 1, Which words give us the impression that he's feeling nervous and insecure? And you'll notice I've put page numbers by it where I've labelled the pages just to help you find the answers. Number 2, explain what the phrase "a sea of lights" is describing. 3, why did the author begin this paragraph with the words "Varjak's stomach lurched"? 4, explain how the author has helped readers to understand how Varjak is feeling throughout the chapter. 5, explain how the wind made Varjak feel worse. 6, what does the verb "staggered" tell us about Varjak and his movements? Question 7, which words show the reader that Varjak confidently walked the wall? Question 8, explain why Varjak calls himself stupid at the end of the chapter. And question 9, explain why outside has a capital letter. So question 9 are throughout the chapter, as so is question 4. So they're not on specific pages. You'll just have to read and think about those two. Okay. So if you do require support, you'll see that I've labelled the colours to match the question so you can see where the text is. So this is page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. So question 1 you find on page 1. Question 2 is at the top here. Question 3 is here. Question 4 is everywhere in the chapter. Question 5 is here. Question 6 is towards the bottom here. Question 7 is here. And question 8 is right at the end. Okay, so pause the video and write the answers to your question or complete them on Teams and send them in. Right, so if you want to know the answers now, the words that tell us he's feeling nervous or insecure are tremors or giddy. The Sea of Lights describes the city at night, because remember he's never seen the big city. Varjak's stomach lurched because he's feeling worried and he thought he might be sick. We know how the author has helped us to understand how Varjak is feeling because he keeps writing the words that Varjak is saying to himself. Thoughts in the head. It doesn't have any inverted commas, but we know that Varjak is talking out loud to himself, or you're going right into his head. The author is going into Varjak's head, and it's helping us understand how Varjak is feeling. The wind made him feel worse because a blast of wind nearly pushed him over, and then he felt the wind was taunting him with its song. Remember that little song I was trying to sing in a weird wind voice? What does the verb "staggered" tell us about Varjak? He was finding it hard to walk. Question 7. He was confident on the wall, and the author tells us this because it said, like he had been walking walls all his life, he was light and springy on his paws. Varjak calls himself stupid at the end because he didn't test out the branch. He was overconfident. So he didn't test it to see if it would hold his full weight, and therefore he fell. The author has used outside with a capital letter because if you remember that Varjak to this point has only been in the Contessa's house, so the outside seems like a big new place, a proper noun, and that's why the author uses a capital O, to show that. Okay, so well done. How did you get on with that? Put your answers into Teams so that we can see them, or send them in the email if you do need to. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow with a comprehension using this skill of explaining. Goodbye.